Me and Gold Crown Politics have created our own polling average for the 2024 presidential election, and today I'm going to show you what would happen if we used the aggregate. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. Today, we're going to be looking at the 2024 election map, looking at the On Point Golden aggregate. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so, what we have essentially done is we've created our own aggregate for the 2024 race. And what we did essentially is we basically plugged in all of the latest averages for certain pollsters that we selected, those being Rasmussen, Emerson, New York Times / Siena, Quinnipiac, Fox News, The Economist / YouGov, CBS News, NPR, PBS / Marist, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Harris, ABC / Washington Post, and Forbes / Harris X. And what we've done is essentially Donald Trump and Harris's Kennedy, Stein, and West's, basically numbers on average from all of the polls, and all of the undecided numbers have been plugged in to this polling aggregate. What we've done is we found the margin from the 2020 election for that same pollster. We find the sample size from 2020, and we also look at the likely voter screen, seeing if they do have a likely voter screen or not. And what's very interesting is we grade them on the margin using an equation dividing, the margin for Biden was 4.5 points last time. So we get the margin and we divide it. That creates a certain score. Then we grade on sample, which what we do is we get the sample from 2020 and we multiply this exact number here, which was tested back to the 2020 aggregate to get a pretty decent aggregate. And we're going to get to that in a second. And we multiply that by the number of polls that have been conducted in the average we've included here. So in this case, the 31 points are going to add a humongous amount to the average here. And we also give everybody one extra point if they are a likely voter poll. So the only poll who wouldn't be getting that here is in fact the Wall Street Journal. They are a registered voter poll, and Harvard Harris does not have a 2020 sample number available, which is interesting. So if you guys want to be included, if I were to plug that in, that does not really change the aggregate much. But if we look here, we clearly see the average scores are all added up, and then all the weights are constructed from the poll, and then based on that, every single percentage from this aggregate is then weighted here. And then we essentially have a weighted aggregate with Trump at 46.1%, Harris at 44.1%, Kennedy at 4.1%, West at 0.8%, Stein at 0.4%, and about 4.4% of the electorate is undecided. And this is about the first time that we have tested the aggregate, and we are going to be basically implementing this and updating it every single day until up to the election. Now, what's very interesting is that you'll notice that clearly we have Trump ahead in the aggregate, and you may be like, well, RCP has Harris up by 1.5, but what we've done is we've mathematically weighed all the polls to the point where the math kind of takes care of the weighing itself. And what's going to be cool is that depending on the number of polls a pollster has in the average at a given time, their weight will change because they are more representative of the data since they have more polling, which would actually make sense from a logical standpoint instead of leaving static weightings. And what I've done is I've essentially asked ChatGPT, okay, like basically grade all of these numbers, and everything was graded on a scale. So basically Rasmussen is the only A pollster here, Economist / YouGov, B. And it's funny because Rasmussen, everybody says, oh, it's a terrible poll, but it's not, guys. Their average in 2020 was spot on, plus 5.3 Biden. That's like almost as close as you can get. Emerson was damn near spot on in the aggregate. Now, their sample size is a lot lower, hence why they are in the C aggregate. And their polls, they also only have one poll from the past month. So that's why, again, their weighting is lower. But like, let's say Rasmussen stops polling. And they have like one poll, but another pollster has more polls, they're going to be more reflective of the aggregate because they're going to have more data for us to look at. So the weights are going to be constantly changing, but that's a good thing because if polls stop polling and then other pollsters start polling, they're going to be more representative of the actual electorate. And Rasmussen has conducted the most polls alongside Economist/YouGov, they have the second highest rating here. And we see a lot of polls, Quinnipiac, CBS News, Fox News, Emerson, they have average ratings. New York/Siena, D rating, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Harris, F, ABC Washington Post, F. Mainly because Harvard Harris does not have a sample size from 2020, and their margin was abysmal. Same thing for 2020. Literally the Wall Street Journal poll was off by 6 points nationally. That's horrendous. Same thing with Marist. They're really, really bad. ABC Washington Post, they were off by 7.5, and their sample is really, really, really low. Their sample is ridiculously low. So that's why they actually end up getting one of the worst ratings. I do think the worst rating here, is the Washington Post. They have a horrible margin, horrible sample, and so that's why they end up getting the worst grading on this system here that we did on a curve. Really, everybody's basically at an F, pretty much, except for Forbes, which I think was at a C, but I decided to grade on a curve to be a little bit more fair. And when you weigh everything properly and you add everything up, these are the vote shares that we get, and Trump is up 2 nationally. Now, this would make sense because Trump did actually get 46.1% of the national popular vote in 2016. So he did actually get a similar electorate, and there's still about 4% of voters that are undecided in the polling data. Harris is at about 44.1, and guys, job approval tends to be very accurate. And right now, Harris's favorables did have gone up, but are probably a little overinflated. Right now, her job approval is at around 45.5%. So her getting around 44.1 is somewhat realistic, but again, 4.4% of the electorate is undecided, so any of these undecideds could effectively decide the margin here. So the race is a toss-up in a way because, Harris could win most undecideds and then win the popular vote by, let's say almost 5 points. It's definitely possible, or technically she'd only probably be winning it by about 2. So it's kind of interesting because Trump's victory is albeit almost guaranteed at this point, mainly because even if she were to win all the undecided, she would be up in the aggregate at 48 point something, and that's not really great because Trump is mainly, that's not great because that's what Hillary was at. It seems like the vote shares may be somewhat similar to 2016 if Hillary or Harris were to get all the undecideds, except that's probably not going to happen. Trump's probably going to get some of the undecided voters, meaning he's probably going to crack 47% of the electorate come, the fall. And what's also fascinating is if I actually plug in the favorability differences from the latest SoCal Strategies poll into my model and apply my own aggregate, we actually get a popular vote of plus 2.2 for Trump, and we have Virginia plus 5. That lines up with the poll that we recently got of Virginia plus 3. So that is interesting. New Mexico is close. New Hampshire is somewhat close. Minnesota is close. Maine at large is close. Now, if Trump is up by 2 in the popular vote, more than likely, California would still be safe. Hawaii would still be safe. Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Nebraska, except the 2nd Congressional District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, as well as Missouri are going to be in the safe column, including South Carolina. Iowa would probably be in the safe Republican column. I think Florida possibly would potentially be in the safe column. And Ohio is a little bit questionable, but it could possibly be there. I do think that D.C., Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont are going to be in the safe column, as well as the state of New York, albeit very narrowly in the safe Democrat column. And so for the likely Republican states, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, these would be in the likely column. I mean, I can't see Georgia, possibly it's lean. It may be a 4 or 5 point victory, but I think it'd probably be about a 5 point win if Trump is winning the popular vote by about 2 points or so. North Carolina, about 7 points. Arizona potentially would end up being around a 4 to 5 point win, possibly around 4 points. Nevada is going to be around a 6-7 point win for Donald Trump. We have Oregon and Washington, around 10 to 14 points in that range. Alaska probably barely is above 15%. Colorado would be likely. Illinois would be likely, as well as Delaware and New Jersey. Rhode Island, Connecticut, the same exact thing. Maine's first would be in the likely column, as well as Maine's second. being safe. And then we have Maine at large and New Hampshire, which those would be interesting because I'm not 100% certain about those. The Rust Belt would, albeit, pretty much go to Trump if he wins the popular vote. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania have been trending to the right, and even if Trump doesn't gain as much with white voters as anticipated, he is still doing fairly well in the Rust Belt if he's going to win the popular vote by 2. New Mexico, presumably with Hispanics, Trump may do somewhat well, so that state may be somewhat close. Minnesota probably is in the lean Democrat column. Maine at large and New Hampshire, possibly New Hampshire is tilt Democrat, including Virginia, and the Nebraska second probably goes to Trump in this scenario. So right now, if Trump were to win the popular vote by 2, this would be my electoral college prediction, with Trump at 313 electoral votes to Harris at 225. So nothing has really changed, but the margins have gotten a little bit better for Trump. And kind of looking at the Florida data today and sort of analyzing some trends, this is probably what I'm thinking. I think Virginia is going to probably vote to the right of Minnesota now, given how the polling really hasn't changed all that much. However, we are going to be doing state averages soon, so we'll have a pretty good idea of where everything is at, and we're going to use the same methodology that we use for the national polls on the state polls, and I'm really curious to see how that ends up. I'm really curious to see how these polls end up there. So guys, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.